you so much. How's everyone doing today? Very good? Okay. So I wish I almost actually want to stand. Welcome, my name is Jane Delcer, and I lead the Inclusive Digital Commerce Accelerator operated by BFA Global and using the Catalyst Accelerator model. You probably saw the panel today on FinTech for Climate Resilience. So that's our team. And the Inclusive Digital Commerce Accelerator is a program that's run by BFA Global, our innovation firm with the support of MasterCard. And we've been running a program for the last 2 years on inclusive digital commerce. So through that, we've been able to work with 6 companies in Ghana and help almost 69,000 MSEs, especially youth, to improve their livelihoods and through digital commerce, to improve and sustain them. So I'm quite proud of that and see the power of digital commerce in the continent. So I'm actually really excited to be part of this discussion with the founders and entrepreneurs at this panel. So we're talking about the future of digital commerce. And before we do that, I think it's important for us to set the stage. What do we mean by digital commerce? It's very specific to the markets where we work. So I want to ask Niyi to introduce the definition.
Okay. Hi, everybody. How y'all doing? Good? The room sounds cold. Hi, everybody. Do you want us to do some exercise? Okay, all right. So my name is Niyi. I'm the co-founder of Primly, and what we do is we provide identity verification for customers. We leverage on AI and machine models, right, to be able to detect fraud and also identity theft. Digital commerce, right, I'll say, is actually a concept, right, and it simply just means buying and selling happening online through digital channels, right, and automating the process end to end. All right, let's take a walk back. Before, what we know is e-commerce, right? And basically people just have a website where merchants can drop their product, right? And then people go online to that platform and then they buy. Gradually, we move to the social commerce, right? Where selling happens on Instagram, WhatsApp, and other social media, Facebook. But right now, I'll say, we are moving beyond that, okay? And in this case, we are automating the process end-to-end where there's no human intervention, meaning customers can actually make decisions on their own based on available content, based on certain behaviors, right? I think that really helps. I don't know if any of the speakers really want to add something else.
Yeah, so my name is Mesongo Sibuti, co-founder and CTIO at MarketForce. Where we essentially serve the informal merchants in Africa. So we build tools to help them get access to B2B commerce and digital financial services. I think to add on what Niyi has said, I think the way we see the future of digital commerce is just pushing more the boundaries, of how we actually digitally serve our customers by taking that service more to the point of need. For the customers, and also hyper-localization in the sense that your service has to have a very good understanding of what the actual customer needs are, and I think that only happens when you bridge the gap, between the service providers and the customers themselves.
Any thoughts from the panelists to add there?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Souleymane. I'm the founder and CEO of ASSURAF. So we're an insurtech based out of Senegal. We provide instant and flexible insurance solution to a tech-powered omnichannel infrastructure. And we, for now, serving Francophone Africa. Just to echo with my 2 other panelists, I think digital commerce is very important and is quite flourishing in the continent. There's still a lot of gaps to be filled, but it has to be understood that it's just not the transaction. It's anything that happens, from the first encounter with a brand or a product online, and anything that happens before and after the transaction. So it's just not the financial transaction, it's anything from the customer and marketing research, for example, data analytics, all the way to the logistics solutions. So there's a lot of things to be done, just like in a lot of other sectors in the continent, and it's very exciting to be in this space.
Good morning, guys. My name is Eric Muli. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lipa. Brief description of Lipa. What we do is we essentially enable retail by reducing friction between merchants and consumers. We do this largely through enabling B2B and B2C buy now, pay later, enabling digital commerce, as well as overall financial products for both merchants and consumers. I think the definition, description of digital commerce has been stated. I'll just use our own words at Lipa, how we think about it. One thing for us is how we view digital commerce is everything that happens behind the scenes. Not just e-commerce, typically what was just meeting when the consumer meets the merchants. That's what e-commerce was digitally. But digital commerce is everything that happens behind the scenes, from how we reach our customers to the way the consumer would pay, to the way the consumer would get their products and or services, to the after-sale services, as well as the overall call it connecting of those dots in a like a circular reference, right? So that's our definition of digital commerce.
I think all very complete definitions. When we were doing our planning on this panel, I think it was you, Mesongo, had said it really just boils down to meeting the customers where they are, whether it's hyper-localization or understanding your customers from start to finish. And so that has a lot of implications about how you build a digital commerce business. So let me start with the first question in terms of how your businesses are growing digital commerce in your markets. I'd love to hear from the panelists about your business and what role you play.
Yeah. Eric,
Leon?
Yeah, interesting. So we at MarketForce, as I mentioned, work directly with the informal merchants. And I mean, the question is why informal merchants? Because if you look at what the enablers of digital commerce are going to be in the continent, you realize that you kind of need a bridge, over time to actually build consumer trust. Because apart from all the other challenges that we have, consumer trust has been one of the bigger challenges in digital commerce in Africa. And, the people that are actually closer to the end consumers in the market are the merchants. So we've been building tools and solutions to help these merchants offer better services to the end consumers as, the African continent transitions over time, into a more direct-to-consumer model, which I think the likes of Lipa play in. So our role has mostly been enabling the informal merchants to be able to get access to the tools and finance that they need to bridge that gap over time. Yeah.
Yes. At ASSURAF, the way we approach digital commerce is twofold. First, because we are ourselves a digital merchant, because we have a direct-to-consumer channel where we need to engage in everything that's customer acquisition, KYC, data collection and analytics, all the way to fulfilling the policy issuance. So that is the first part. And the second part, as a embedded finance actor, we see a lot of opportunities for insurance partnerships, so that we are enabling more players in the value chain.
Yeah, let's come back to that too. You mentioned earlier, Mesongo, about consumer trust and maybe what the role of insurance is for digital commerce and creating more of that consumer trust. Any thoughts from you, Niyi or Eric?
Yeah, as mentioned, at Lipa, what our fundamental goal is to reduce friction between merchants and consumers. We do that in three main ways. So this is our contribution to digital commerce. One is through credit. What we do is we enable our consumers to shop, pay affordably in monthly installments for products and services across the retail sector. Number two is we allow merchants to be able to use credit, access credit, to be able to stock up and be able to have enough stock to be able to sell to these consumers. One of the biggest challenges we've seen in dealing with tens of thousands of merchants is that yes, we could be able to provide credit for the consumer, but if we're not able to do it on the other side, there's also a gap and it interferes with shopping. So that's one way that we're reducing the friction in retail across the digital commerce ecosystem. Second is through the actual point of shopping, where what we're doing is we're allowing our retailers, these are small merchants all the way up to massive merchants like Carrefour, to be able to sell online and allowing them to be able to reach their consumers. So that's a very important part of what we do in this space. So we allow them to set up shops, sell online, and of course, at the same time, allowing our consumers to be able to shop and pay in monthly installments. We have our third key touch point, which is payments. That's a work in progress, but fundamentally how we believe our customers view us is as a payment option that, again, is enabling that overall transaction from the point retailer buys it from the wholesaler to the point where a consumer is paying for it over time.
Okay. So this panel is about what is the future of digital commerce. We thought we'd ask you. We don't know. So I'm curious to hear from the audience what you think the future of digital commerce is in Africa. Please feel free to ask for the mic and share your thoughts with us. Do we have a mic for this gentleman? All right, mic.
Hi, my name is Andreas. I'm co-founder of Mwingi, and we focus on the rural areas where we do trading, wholesaling, and connecting the underserved communities. My question to you is, and we've talked about this, my dear colleague from MarketForce, how are you going to tackle the rural areas? Because I see you have great traction in the urban areas, but 70% of people live in rural areas and they may not be as connected to the devices that are needed to do business with you. And what are you going to do about it? Thank you.
So we can come back to that question later. Andres, am I to understand you're trying to understand the future of digital commerce and the reach for rural populations? Yeah, okay. Hopefully we do see that. Any other thoughts from the audience on what the future will look like? Yes, gentleman in the back.
Thank you. I'm William Linda from Easy Agri, and we help to stock the rural informal merchants for agri inputs. Maybe my question to the panel is that where we seeing the already existing brick and mortar wholesalers, what's going to be their role playing in the e-commerce? Because when we see, the more we digitize, the more actually we try to formalize the supply chain. But the key question is that the existing players, are we pushing them out, or we can see that actually they can play another role in the ecosystem? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think your point speaks to the role of how we work with small merchants, right? And their role in distribution and expanding reach for e-commerce. So another aspect of how digital commerce can look in the future, and also how it looks today. Any other thoughts from the audience on what the future will look like? Gentleman here.
Oh, thank you. My name is Ifeoluwa Ariyo Agbaje. I'm communications lead at Vesti Technologies. What we do is basically provide, we're a profile provider of legal and financial services for immigrants from when they decide to migrate to another country and even every minute after. So basically a platform that deals with giving them solutions to both their migration pathways and financial services. So when I look at the future of digital commerce, I think it's quite an exciting one, particularly for immigrants as they move globally, as they access financial services anywhere in the world as they become global citizens across the world. So for us, I think it's quite an exciting one, and I'm quite optimistic about how immigrants, regardless of their location across the globe, are able to make transactions, engage in trade, and interact within the commercial space. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Judy Gishoke, working for Safaricom's the strategy team. When I think about the future of digital commerce, I think it's going to be more consolidated. Today we have people playing in different places. I've heard of the ones playing maybe like the BNPL, for example. We have someone else doing the logistics. I think we are going to find more consolidation across the industry, and people coming together, and maybe even bigger platforms will build out of that.
Hi, my name is Mkopaji, CTO at Bosso. But before Bosso, I co-founded a company called Zipos, and I think we did more of what MarketForce does in some way, but we're mostly inclined on solving the issue of inventory management. There was a bit of payments as well there. So when looking at the future of digital commerce, I see two things. There's an aspect of trust. I think there's a reason why telcos have really succeeded with mobile money. And this is because they actually provide a booth. Someone goes there, they give someone, they can see the money, and there's that trust. In most cases, when we introduce new tech to mostly the informal sector, people are reluctant in making, payments at the point of sale. Like if they're doing if they're purchasing from a mobile app or something like that, they tend to they freeze at the point of checkout. I've seen that in our numbers and in our analytics. So they'll add their stuff to the cart, and then all the way when it comes to payments now, you ask them for their money and then they freeze or they drop at that point. So there you can see there's an issue of trust. But then another question is to do with, do we have enough devices, like smart devices, among our informal retailers in this case? Do you think there are enough smart devices there? Because in case of Bosso, we're struggling with the micro merchants, like the hardware store owners. Most of them, they have got feature phones. Does this mean we have to simplify our technology further? Because if we simplify it any further than it is right now, it becomes even more complex. I've seen this with our National Revenue Authority. They tried to force a certain device among micro retailers so that they could they could have visibility in what was being sold and stuff like that. But this wasn't a proper smart device, and it took longer for someone to just make one sale. It took probably 10 minutes. You're just attending to one customer, and I don't think that's innovation there. So, thank you.
So, all great. Thank you so much. So all, I think, really excellent points, and that we experience in our work. We've been talking about the role and reach for perhaps excluded populations like rural, the small businesses, the micro merchants, but also talking about how those merchants act as distribution in a way, a kind of commerce infrastructure. Displaced populations, so immigrants and perhaps displaced populations, as well as consolidation through platforms. This is what we see in other markets, right? The type of super platforms. So we have those three buckets that you've shared with us in terms of what the future might look like. To our panelists, before we ask you, one point I wanted to share was, I don't have the visual today, but there's an analyst, formerly with Andreessen Horowitz, who publishes an annual presentation on media, mobile, and tech. And one of the slides that I thought was really interesting and I wanted to bring here was how it was the evolution of mobile data, right? The adoption of mobile data. So starting at 2000, basically a flat curve until 2019, right? 20 years until you finally get to 2019 and it grows exponentially. So the future is not always fast in coming, right? That's one visual I want you to have in mind. And the other one is around AI and VR, where as a technology, it's been around since 1990, and there's a peak, same thing, the graph is flat from 1990, and then in 2019, there's a bit of a peak, and then again, the peak drops, and then again, where we are now, right? This whole craze around ChatGPT and OpenAI, so it's a type of curve where it looks like it's gonna grow, and it doesn't, right? It's like two little devil horns. And it just takes a lot of time for technology to grow. So when we're thinking about the future, we're also operating under that uncertainty and in a sector where it's not all digital, right? We're interacting in the real economy and there are real constraints when it comes to reaching these customer segments, building into these markets. So to our panelists, I'd like to hear about you and your thoughts on what the future of digital commerce looks like from where you sit. Niyi, should we start with you?
Right. I think I'm going to start from what the gentleman mentioned, which is trust, right? And then how hard technology adoption to it, okay? And then lastly, infrastructure, right? I think buying and selling pretty much happens based on trust, right? In the informal sector, I would say the person close to you, right, or that stays on your street is more like the first person that you will go to buy or pick up stuffs from, right, as it is. And the reason is because there is trust. Now, we're going digitally, and what that means is a lot of people are actually going online to consume services, meaning I don't know the merchants behind, and the merchant at the same time doesn't know me. So the first thing is, how do we establish trust, right? And I would say that's where the ease of onboarding, identity verification pretty much comes into place. And it's not a one-way thing, I would say it's two-way thing, meaning I, as a consumer, I need to be able to verify who the merchant is if I have the opportunity of seeing the merchant. And secondly, the merchant also needs to verify me, right, to be sure that this is the main person. Now, another thing we need to look out for, and this is to answer the question regarding the rural area, I think is all about technology adoption and also infrastructure, right, as it is. Mobile money pretty much grew faster, right, because I think people are open to try things. If you walk back in history, people will keep money at home, right, because they don't trust anybody to basically manage their money. But when banks are coming up, people trust banks more, and gradually we see all fintechs also coming up, right? And people are trying different things. So now I would say it's all about the mindset, right? And also building that trust, and at the same time making those infrastructure available. And I would say all of us on this panel, our business is basically just enabling this and making sure that technology is available. People are able to use the technology effortlessly and efficiently, right? There are some other bottlenecks, right, that I think other panel members will mention, like the logistics and some other things like that.
Okay, so you are contributing to building out the part of consumer trust and onboarding.
Correct.
Okay, Mesongo?
Yeah, I think very interesting questions and comments from the audience. I think what that shows you clearly is that, I think that Africa as a continent, we're generally lucky because our challenges are always glaring. You do not need to, go digging so much to see what the challenges are. And as the lady, I think Gishuki from Safaricom mentioned, there is a bit of consolidation that I see coming up. I'm not sure how the consolidation is going to look like, but I like to call it collaborative consolidation. Why? It's because, as we build the pipelines to actually enable digital commerce, even when I just look at this panel, for example, I'll consume these services. for verifying my merchants. I can then offer insurance to my merchants using ASSURAF here. And I can give BNPL that we already do to our merchants using Lipa letter as a payment option. So that shows you that the issues are already known. There is a lot of people in the ecosystem working to solve different segments of these issues. So I think we are in a transition phase where we still trying to figure out what's that one thing that's actually going to be the inflection point for us to get large scale in terms of digital commerce. So yeah, I think there is quite a number of other challenges that we need to resolve. So like consumer trust, logistics challenges, payments. I mean, there's a lot of fintechs we're building, but if you go cross-border, payments, the adoption of payments across the markets is very varied. And I think as another gentleman mentioned about technology, for example, how are we going to enable? We want the people at the bottom of the pyramid to use technology, but what's going to be the enabling model of actually getting them the necessary technology to be able to use? So I think there's a lot of people looking into this, and the way this comes together, we're going to see an evolution, over time into that future.
Yeah, I love that point because it's consolidation, but from the standpoint of these merchants or small businesses that you work with, they serve as means to bundle services, right? So there's a consolidation of offering, but also the way these services come together. So it's not just digital commerce, but because it's more seamless, it starts to feel more like e-commerce. But point being that how do we get the technology in their hands? Great, terrific. Souleymane?
Yeah. As far as digital commerce, the starting point, and I'll speak here from the Francophone and West Africa standpoint, is still very much fragmented. Fragmented, like a lot of informal social media sellers that haven't been yet formally aggregated. So I think that there's a lot of foundation to be done here in terms of customer integrated knowledge, research, marketing, and whatnot, which is the first part. The second part, where mobile network operators have done a great job, is solving the payment barrier, and I believe that most of them, with the emerging trend of super apps, will be very strong digital commerce players. And the last part of it is the logistic part, where we have actors like MarketForce and others, and hopefully there will be a lot more coming. There's a lot of logistic challenges, but once we have gone past that, I believe the future will bring a lot of mass customized customer experience, from the very deep knowledge we have of the customers. It will provide integrated customer experience as well as in, augmented reality. I mean, we have seen that, in other developed markets where, especially during COVID, I'll just give the example of Sephora, for example, like this huge cosmetic group, where, they have included, the whole trying of lipstick, for example, with augmented reality and things like that. I mean, they can seem very far from us currently, but I think that, Africa has really proven that we can quite leapfrog very fast things. So, this ultra-customized experience will come in as well. Somebody has mentioned, but that goes in line with the logistic solutions, like in terms of integrated inventory control all the way to the end delivery. And the last part is marketing. I think that there's still a lot of things to be done in knowing our customers well, because once we know them, we can better engagement and drive greater value and revenue generation.
Yeah.
Thanks. I think I'll just start with some of the challenges I think we're facing and what I believe the future partly looks like. Following up on the question around the rural areas and so on. I think the challenges that we face, that some of us here are dealing with, are very real. They're quite large, and they're very serious. And they're not, they're quite obvious, as Mesongo said. You don't need to look too deeply. They're there, but fixing them is quite a challenge. One challenge that we face in not even just rural areas, even semi-urban areas, is cultural nuances, right? How do people actually shop? How do people view commerce? What is someone's understanding of commerce in the first place, right? That's one massive challenge that, that is not easy to fix with just tech, but it's a fact of the matter that how commerce is viewed in rural areas, in semi-urban areas, is different. An example, case in point, that we just started a digitization campaign of the Mombasa County. Mombasa, which is, I think, Kenya's second largest urban area, if I'm not wrong. And what we're spending our first 30 days on is just sensitization of what e-commerce is, what digital commerce is, what are the benefits of this. That's all we're doing for the first 30 days, right? And we realized that speaking to the locals in the different sub-counties and so on, that it's a critical task, because without that understanding, we will be wasting our time trying to reach the masses, right? And this is in a county like Mombasa. So we're doing the same thing in multiple counties now, with the support of the county and national government, to sensitize people on the importance of digital commerce as a whole. There are some other challenges that then now trickle down from that like access to devices, access to internet, even access to electricity to charge those devices. And we can keep going down that list, right? So I say that to say that it's, as you rightfully mentioned, like, this will take time to be fully solved and to get to a point where, we're extremely happy about it. But those are some of the real challenges we face. I would then add and say, like, what we believe the future will look like is there definitely has to be a lot of consolidation, a lot of partnerships. I think when we look at what the consumers and the merchants are looking for now, people want simplicity. People want to use a centralized platform. People don't want to use too many different tools. People want you to remember them when they're shopping, both as a merchant and as a consumer, right? So for us to do that, the industry is there are very many different platforms, all working towards kind of like a similar goal, but it's fragmented. So I think that type of consolidation is important, and it's largely going to be driven by the needs and the demand from our customers.
So we talked about heading to that future, right, where we are addressing more excluded segments like rural or immigrant populations, MSCs, micro merchants. And we also talked about consolidation, bundling of services, and meeting the customers where they are. And we also talked this topic of consumer trust and being able to help consumers kind of get past some of the friction points with using digital products and services. So if we're headed towards that future, how is your business, and how are you approaching getting there? How are you closing that gap? Okay.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Mohammed. I'm the CEO of TMAT. So TMAT is the all-in-one business app that allows businesses to manage their sales, inventory, income and expenditure, and also allow them to sell online. So this is just my question about what we think about the future of commerce is that one of the challenges that we have in commerce is that we have what we call what you buy is different from what you get. So like in fashions, what you order is different from what you get. So what is the feature in that time? And what's the approach on how to mitigate that?
Should I pick that?
Okay, let's hold on to that response later. We're going to answer questions towards the end, but I think it's absolutely a valid point, right? It contributes to the issue around consumer trust. I'd like to go back to the point about how you are helping to reach that future of digital commerce, right? On being more inclusive, being part of this bundling of services, and building on the consumer trust. Souleymane?
Yeah, I think that trust is a big issue that we're facing, and it, as far as ASSURAF is concerned, I mean, it comes in two ways. The first thing is to be very simple in the way you communicate with your prospect. Especially being in insurance, is being very simple in the lingo, avoid legalese and insider jargon, so that customer really understand what they get. And the second thing is really be committing to deliver the service that we say we're delivering. I think this is the best way to build trust. The second part, which is more security challenges we may have, because that we really need to keep that into account, is to ensure that the customer data is safe and secure. Because this whole digital commerce thing, comes with challenges of data breach and etc. Really make sure and ensure the customer that all the data we have from him, from all of the digital footprint of his online behavior, is safe with the players. And through either product or the way we go about our business, we really need to, we at ASSURAF trying to make sure that we are building trust, as well as ensuring that the data from the customers are safe.
Yeah. I see you nodding your head, Niyi, from the identification service.
Yeah, I think for us, we're playing at the onboarding stage, right? That's the touch points where people get to meet with your platform, right? And if they're interested, after making a decision, definitely they need to create an account. And that process needs to be very, very seamless. And what we are doing is to ensure that we provide the platform, right, where you can easily do identity verification, right, by collecting also limited data, right, as it is. And then you build on that to ensure that this person is actually the same person he claims to be. Another challenge that we've seen is that the fact that people are moving online, what that leads to is identity theft. And then identity theft will propagate into payment fraud, right? And we are also playing at this point. And I'll give you a typical example. We actually do what's called a bin verification, right? As a card bin verification. And the reason why we do this is because we want to be sure that this person who has signed up is the real owner of this card, right, as it is, and is not just a card that's been compromised, because the ripple effect is on the service provider who are enablers like Lipa later, is that it's going to increase chargeback, right, as it is. But we want to ensure that we're solving this problem, and it all comes down to you really knowing who this person is, right, before you actually even do transaction with them.
Mm-hmm. And I think you had mentioned, Eric, in our conversation that the tech moves faster, than the regulation, and that's something you guys have to navigate. Data, personal data, I think, is one of them. Anything to add from your end on how you guys are navigating this tech, always balancing the possible regulatory framework that you deal with?
Maybe just in general, maybe not necessarily on how we're tackling regulation, but I think what we're doing, some of the challenges that have been raised, one main thing that we're doing also is giving people access to affordable smart devices. That's a very important, very, very important objective of ours, and it's a need for this space to grow. Majority of our financing actually goes into device financing and things like that that will actually play a very important role to enabling digital commerce as a whole. Another key thing that we're also doing is educating and providing the platform to SMEs, MSMEs to be able to sell online. That's very important and meet the customers wherever they are. right? So that's a lot of the things that we're doing. We can't actually do them without some of the people on this panel and some of the companies in the ecosystem, because it's not they're not we kind of depend on different like whether it's identity verification and so on and so forth to get some of these things actually done. So that's important. I think maybe from a regulation point of view, I think it's also important for the ecosystem and to help educate the government and the regulators. I think that's something that needs to be a collaborative effort that needs to go out. Case in point, like some context is like it was only until like 2014 where an e-signature was actually legal, right, in Kenya. Yeah? So this is 2014. That's when I think the Kenya Information Commercial Act was finally passed, but that was finally added to it. So it's important to note that that's just a simple example, but there are several different other things that I think the regulators need some education on as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, let me just add one more thing.
Sure.
Okay, so one other thing that we see very important, right, is to bring businesses and government together, right? Because I was saying sometimes the regulation try to meet up with technology, right? And sometimes you just wake up to different regulatory policy. One of the things that we are doing at Identitypass is to bring compliance officers together with government regulators. We're starting that in Nigeria, where we bring the CBN, we bring the NFIU and some other people, right, playing in the regulatory space together with everyone who has to be compliant with this regulatory framework. And the reason is because we need to foster that relationship. We need to create a very, very mutual, I would say, ground where people are open to express their opinion, right? Understand some things and be able to explain, at least to government, what they are doing, and the government can also, on the other side, reciprocate, right? And I think it's something that we plan to move across Africa, right? Because we see that to create a very tight connection between technology enablers and also the government.
Absolutely. I think especially in digital commerce, where digitization opens up a whole new realm of taxation, that's something that policymakers have to be keenly aware of to not stunt the adoption of digital commerce because of policy or taxation.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, are we able to queue up the slide here on the playbook? So while we're waiting for that, a resource that I want to make available to you is thinking about the conversation on onboarding and how consumer trust is something, it's mindset, right? It's how you approach and how you build out the offering, how the customers experience your product. And so there's a resource that the program that I'm leading is about to launch. It's called the Digital Onboarding Playbook. And it's a free resource for startups, for founders to basically develop much more strategic ways to onboard customers, merchants, micro enterprises. And it's a resource that would allow you to think through much more strategically the gamut of non-digital to digital customers. So what are the strategies that you use in order to deal with this last mile? And how do you do it in a way that's much more viable, right? From the standpoint of a business, the onboarding piece, you guys know this well, is very expensive, right? The last mile is the most expensive part in digital commerce. So that's a resource that's available to you. It's a playbook, so that means you can read one chapter or many, and pick and choose the topics that are most useful for you, whether it's your onboarding strategy and planning it, whether it's building out your sales team, whether it's thinking through customer service, all aspects of how you can be much more inclusive to working with micro merchants and the last mile. So I don't have that queued up for you, but there is a QR code. Hopefully we get that up for you, and it's launching at the end of this month if you'd like to access that resource. Okay, so to that point, we were getting asked questions a lot about the micro merchants. What are some of the strategies that you guys are using to help small businesses succeed? What's worked well for you?
Yeah. So I think because our focus has been micro merchants, and I just wanted to add something actually on consumer trust before I go into that, is what we've seen. So building the technology, like the tech bit of it, I think that's the simpler part of the problem scope, because I think what Eric mentioned around the cultural issues and education around digital commerce is probably a bigger obstacle that needs a little bit more collaboration. Because you realize that in Africa, trust is, it's community-based, it's cultural-based, and the expectations are quite high in the sense that, if you're not able to actually deliver in time, in full, and at the right price, you miss the point, and regaining back the trust is always a problem. So I think anyone who is thinking about building consumer trust, you have to think about how do you actually localize your product and your presence to be able to get trust in different areas where you're operating. Because the expectation, say, in a tier 2 city, a village, and a tier 1 city like Nairobi are very different, just because of the education penetration, the experiences they have had, and things like that. So how we're building micro merchants is definitely enabling them through financial access, also giving them the right tools to use for that, working with partners to support them to get access to things like smartphones, even fridges for their shops, and things that will help them actually be able to deliver to the consumers. And also the education bit. So we also do a lot of education and engagement with the merchants to be able to actually understand what are their needs beyond even just the business they're running, because most of these people are solo entrepreneurs, and the work that they are doing as a micro merchant and their personal life is intertwined. So you actually have to kind of sometimes touch outside the business itself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Bringing the right tools, education, and even helping to finance the tools, right? So they can work digitally. What about going back to this gentleman's question about, so working with digital commerce and merchants, that what you buy is not what you get? Any approaches that you can speak to that have worked well to address this issue? From the MarketForce side or from anyone else's?
I think it's a tough one. It's very tough to solve. We have tried different. A lot of back-end work we need. The same thing around like the consumer trust angle as well. So it's a push and pull thing. It's more of trying to get, the latter is more important than the former, in terms of educating the merchants on the importance of this. We're adding in infrastructure and payment options like try before you buy and things like that to help with that. But I think fundamentally it will be at a merchant level that we need to solve that.
Final words of advice for the startups in the audience. Any recommendations or insights from your end on launching and running a digital commerce business?
Okay, I think I'm going to go first, and what I'm going to say is all about collaboration and partnership, right? Don't try to reinvent the wheel, meaning you want to do everything end to end. I think it's too much to do. There are a lot of partners that are already doing things that you need to get started. So just identify them and work with them. Basically, I would say face your hustle, kind of a thing.
I definitely believe that the growing power of digital commerce and platform is a massive opportunity for partnerships. partnership to better engage the customers and also provide them, the expected experience to their journeys. And this is not something that one startup or, digital company can do. So let's just get into meaningful partnerships and, make this all happen together.
Yeah. I think, partnerships, but also, make sure you spend 90% of your time talking to the end users. And I'm sure you can get people to build the rest of the backend stuff. I always believe that, the thing that you actually have to have a great understanding yourself is of who your consumer is and what their actual needs are, beyond what you're seeing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that we're still at the infant stages of digital commerce in Africa. We have a long way to go. We're making significant progress. But I think one of the ways that we can catalyze that is by deeply understanding our customer base, deeply understanding the problem that we're solving, and the challenges that our consumers and customers actually have, and by also very deep partnerships and collaborations amongst ourselves.
Excellent. You heard it here. I want to thank our panelists and ETS for the opportunity, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.